I am very excited to have been asked to speak to you today and hope that you find my presentation both interesting and helpful. My goals for this presentation are: 1. Help you understand the potential benefits of setting goals. 2. Encourage the goal to be based on the dreams and desires of the individual. 3. Explain the dangers of words like reasonable expectations. I will use my experience to give you some examples of how to do this. Please understand that I'll be talking about my personal goals, but the process will work for anyone and their dreams. Why set goals? Well, the other option was to just go with the flow. Or, as Lewis Carroll wrote in Alice in Wonderland, one day, Alice came to a fork in the road and saw a exercise cat in a tree. "Which road do I take?" she asked. "Where do you want to go?" was his response. "I don't know," Alice answered. "Then," said the cat, "it doesn't matter." Or, as that great philosopher Yogi Berra said, if you don't know where you're going, you might wind up someplace else. My feeling is that it does matter, and that you don't want you or your family to wind up, someplace else. When you set goals and you start planning, you can get there. And I want to use my experience to give you some examples and ideas. When you achieve your goals, you will reach higher than you expected. But you have to not let words like reasonable expectations to stand in the way. It all starts with dreams about the future and what you want. However, one of the greatest hurdles a person with disabilities faces is that many professionals have their own ideas about what would be good goals. It is not that these professionals mean to derail your dreams. It is just that they don't want you to get disappointed if the dreams are not achieved. They will use words like reasonable or realistic expectations. Unfortunately, if these suggestions are accepted, the person never gets a chance to pursue their dream. It's like playing baseball, but never getting a chance to bat. You don't know if you can hit a home run, or even a single, if you never get to step up to the plate. My feeling is that it is better to pursue a dream and fail than to not even to try. So, therefore, my first advice to you is to watch out when you hear the words reasonable expectations. Let me give you a few examples of some reasonable expectations that were given to me. When I was only a few days old, my doctor had this advice from my parents. He may learn to tie his shoes, but he will never be able to cross the street. Well, thank goodness we didn't accept my doctor's predictions of the future. Another great place to hear the term reasonable expectations is in an IEP meeting. We were meeting with a group of experts to discuss where I should go to school after preschool. It was my very first IEP meeting. This is what the experts' reasonable expectations were. He might be reading above grade level now, but he will plateau soon and eventually go down. He should go into a self-contained trainable classroom. I wasn't even in the first grade yet, and they were deciding my future. Fortunately, we didn't accept the advice. So you can see the potential dangers of reasonable expectations. But let's get back to dreams. Dreams will let you explore any future without being tied to what is reasonable or expected. They will let you be free to imagine what you want and what is important to you. There are no barriers to what you can dream, and only you can decide what is important to you. Everyone, whether they have a disability or not, has the right to have their very own dreams. Just because a person has a disability does not lessen the importance of their dreams. In this presentation, I'm going to be talking about my dreams, but in no way do I mean to give the impression that my dreams are right for you or for your students. Some of my important dreams did turn to long-term goals. I set those goals, and I accomplished them. But each individual should be allowed to plan their future, and it is likely their dreams and goals were not to be the same as mine. Some people would define a dream as a fantasy, and that is why the word can be very dangerous. If you talk about a dream, then it might be considered as something that can never be real. I would prefer the definition of a consideration of possibilities. Possibilities can happen with work. But at some point, it is important to turn those possibilities into the action of actually living those possibilities. My feeling is that you do this by setting goals for your future. Whether they are long-term or short-term, they can give you direction. As a young child, I didn't have any dreams about my future or have any ideas what would be important. Luckily, my mom and dad set these goals for me. These were the goals for me. 1, to be happy. 2, to live a full life. And 3, to give me options for my life. I did achieve these goals. When I was at the age, I didn't consider the future. My parents gave me goals so that I would have the foundation to build my future. Here are some examples on how I achieved these early goals. The first example is intensive early stimulation. From the time that I was only a few months old, my folks made sure that I was stimulated from both a physical and mental standpoint. For example, when I was about 4 years old, my folks had me on a running and exercise program. I had to run different distances. When I achieved a certain number of miles, I would get stars in my sweats. I think my longest one was 4 miles at one time. So with that, I kept that up, but I chose other forms of physical activity. In addition to the exercise, they also provided mental stimulation by exposing me to a great deal of new information daily. Another example would be to learn how to read at age 3. And looking back and being able to read before I started school was the key to my later education. In preschool and elementary school, teachers could see that I could read, and so they would assume that I could learn other things too. It was important to show to them that I had the ability to learn. And reading has become one of my favorite pastimes. When I was in preschool, the teacher would let me read stories to the class. Well, we didn't agree to the recommendations made at the first IEP meeting. In fact, I was in a regular classroom for my entire education. Occasionally, and during the day, I would go to a special classroom for extra support. But this didn't happen often, so that I would not miss the teaching that was taking place in my primary classroom. How can you learn if you're not in the classroom? The special support is great and needed, but it needs to be provided when you're not missing the regular classes. Now, let's talk about a technique that I use to plan my future. Person-centered planning is a tool that can turn dreams into action. I am not going to even try to explain the techniques applied to this planning tool. There are many organizations that can help you use this tool. Some are in Kansas City, and I'll be talking about that later. I just want to say that the planning to be based on the talents and desires of the person. Traditional plans try to fix the person's disability. I don't want to be fixed. I want to be supported to achieve my goals. In 1993, I heard about person-centered planning and was introduced to Mike McCarthy of the Institute for Human Development at the University of Missouri. He became the facilitator for developing my plans for the future. This approach did work for me, by turning my dreams into goals, and then turn the goals into action plans. At meetings with Mike and my circle of friends, we discussed my dreams and, over time, created my goals for the future. This is my peer group, circle of friends. To this group, we added friends, past employers, transition planners, and a key supporter from Voc Rehab. We talked about for me to move out and not with my folks, and I thought that was a great goal. We also talked about me going to college and to get a job after that. I told my friends that these were good ideas, so we made plans for how it might happen. Driving was important to me, and so discussed the steps necessary to get a driver's license. I also talked about the type of social life I would like to have, and we discussed how to make that happen. Goals are great to have, but you need a plan to turn those goals into action. And you would have to prioritize those goals, because it is important to focus your effort so you can actually make progress. Let's look in a little more detail into a few of my goals. Let's start with driving. In high school, I took driver's education and learned all the basics for driving a car. I passed my written test on the first time, but my instructor wouldn't give me my learner's permit. He thought that someone with Down syndrome should not drive. My parents and school principal helped him to change his mind. But I needed more help and practice than high school driver's education could provide. So I worked with a special driving instructor at the Rehabilitation Institute of Kansas City. The instructor was trained in helping people with disabilities learn to drive, and he worked with me for many months. One day, after school, I went to the driver license bureau to take the written and the driving tests. I passed both tests on the first try. I felt really proud that I got my first driver's license. and learned that you sometimes have to fight to get your chance to succeed. My instructor from the Rehabilitation Institute of Kansas City was really pleased that I passed the test and got my driver's license, but he had one special caution for me. Just because you passed the test doesn't mean that you are a great driver. It just means that you have met the minimum standard for driving, so be careful and keep practicing. I learned that driving can be dangerous. You have to stay alert while you're driving, and if you don't, you might be in an accident. If you have a driver's license, you need your own wheels. One of my most exciting milestones was buying my first new car. I had saved for over 2 years to have enough money, but was still a little short. So I went to the bank and got a loan to cover the cost. It took me another 6 months to pay off the loan, but it is now all mine. Now, let's talk about another goal, going to college. First, we investigated different options, such as business college, junior college, community college, and other colleges and universities. My first choice was to go to a college away from home. Of course, I had to take high school classes that would prepare me for college. Some of them were really hard. During my junior year, I started researching colleges. Guess what? I did not find any colleges that had any special support programs for people with Down syndrome. But I did find colleges that had special supports for people with learning disabilities. Well, I applied to 3 colleges, one in Arkansas, one in Iowa, and a community college in the Kansas City area. The one that had the best support was in Arkansas, but the director of the Special Support Center turned me down and said that based on her professional opinion, I was not capable of doing college-level work. Another reasonable expectation. Evidently, she couldn't see past my disability. Maybe being turned down in Arkansas was my lucky day, because I next visited Graceland College in Lamoni, Iowa. While the supports were not as great as the college in Arkansas, their attitude more than made up for it. And plus, it was 150 miles away from home. I told my folks as we were driving to Graceland for my freshman year that I was going to graduate. Even though they told me just do the best I could and learn. Actually, I think they were concerned about whether I could succeed without their daily support. But they also wanted me to have the chance and the experience, and I wasn't nervous at all. When I was in college, I had a lot of fun, but some classes were quite challenging. Here are some photos of the fun. My group won the airband contest that year. The Backwoods Feast was an annual event sponsored by the Orion House. That's where I lived for my entire college years. This was the annual big dance for the campus. Since we were not on campus on January 1st, we had our celebration in November. In college, I was a part of the Orion House. That's where I lived. I was on house council there. I was the treasurer for the hall and took care of all the house funds. I had a lot of fun and many friends there. Now this is a lesson series photo of the group. Of course, I am leaving out the part of me when I had my head shaved as part of freshman initiation. That was a big surprise for my mom when she came for a visit. Of course, I had to have supports on the educational part. They included working 1 hour per day with a counselor who would guide me on the coursework. In most of my classes, I used a tape recorder in lectures so that I could listen to them again to fill in my notes. I had to sign up for tutors for my hard classes. They would help me with preparing for tests. Local rehab ordered some books on tape for me to use when I studied. On those tapes were my textbooks that I used in classes. My professors would give me some extra time for tests. I motivated myself to go to class and be early, and I did every assignment on time. While some of the college courses were really hard, I always felt that I had the support of the other students, the staff, and my professors. You can't believe how friendly everyone was. The reward of all this work was when I received my Bachelor of Arts degree in Recreation with a minor in theater on Mother's Day in 2000. It took me 4.5 years to finish, and was one of my proudest accomplishments. Earlier, I talked about the supports that I had at Graceland. One of those was meeting with a counselor 1 hour every day. Lynn Edwards was my counselor, and I owe him a great deal of thanks. He supported me every day in my goal of graduating from college. Now, let's talk about a third example of setting and achieving goals: getting my first job after college. During my senior year of college, I reviewed all of my goals and revised them to guide my job search. The goals were: 1, to use my degree that I got in college; 2, to live independently in my own apartment. I would be able to set my own rules and to do whatever I wanted to. 3, I wanted to live in a small town where I could drive. And 4, I also wanted to work with people with disabilities. While I did have some interviews on campus for potential jobs, I actually found my job with suggestions and contacts made by family friends. I found the perfect place with an organization in Arkansas that provided services to people with disabilities. The only downside is that I didn't know anyone in the town, but it was the right size for me to drive, and the job involved working with people with disabilities in the day program. I was a staff aide. I moved into my first apartment and had the freedom to make my own rules for the first time. Living away from home for college prepared me somewhat for this, but now I had to prepare my meals, handle paying bills, and handle all the other normal day-to-day details. The independence was wonderful, but it was a little lonely at first until I got involved in some activities. My folks lived 8 hours away, but they helped me get settled and visited often. Plus we have the telephone, email, and faxes to stay in touch. The day I moved into my apartment, I was really excited. But the day I drove myself to work on the first day, I really felt grown up and independent. It is hard to explain the feeling of freedom that I had in my own place. I got to make all the decisions for the first time in my life and I liked it. But I still need some supports to be self-sufficient. Living totally on my own meant that I had to learn some of its benefits. But the downside was that I wasn't using my degree. When I joined this organization, they said that they were interested in creating a recreational program and that I would be involved in its creation. In the meantime, I was a staff aide in a day program. I really enjoyed working with the clients and teaching them life skills. But after 2 years, I became frustrated when there was no progress in starting the recreational program. In December of 2002, I decided to quit and start looking for a new job. It was a hard step to make. I searched. Fortunately, I was able to find a job with Parks and Recreation in the evenings on the sports programs. The second thing I did was to revise my goals and start a job search. My current goals include 1. To have a career by using my degree, skills, and experience. I wanted a career where there is growth and development, not just a job. I want to learn something new every day. I would like to use my college degree, skills, and experience. I worked really hard to get my degree at Graceland. I want to use it to make a contribution. I want a job that would interact with customers and other staff members. I would like to have a mentor that would guide me in doing my job well and also coach me on how to grow my capabilities. I have learned from the past 5 years what is important to look for in a career. 2, I want to live more independently. I would like to continue to live in my own apartment and maybe someday my own house or condo. I would like to have a full-time job with a good pay and health benefits. And I would love to continue to drive. 3rd, I want to live a full life and be a part of a community with many friends. With friends, I'll be able to socialize whenever I wanted to. I would like to go to any outside activities like theater, movies, golf, and spectator sports. I also want to be active in my church. Lastly, I want to help my community by volunteering in activities that would aid people with disabilities. I want to serve on nonprofit boards and committees. Let me give you a quick status update on my current goals. I sent out a ton of resumes and had many interviews. Fortunately, I was offered 3 jobs, but they just didn't fit all my goals, so I decided to keep on looking. I interviewed with the YMCA of Kansas City, and they offered me a job as a fitness attendant. I started work there in August of 2003 and loved the job. That November, I took classes to become a personal trainer and was certified after passing the test. While I have had a few clients, I would like more. It seems that some people are a little hesitant to use a personal trainer who happens to have a disability. The members and staff at the Red are so great. So, if you are wanting to get in shape, see me at the Red Y. I've been living in my apartment and love the fact that it has a patio. So I've started outdoor cooking on my new grill. I'm not driving as much as I did in Arkansas for 2 reasons. First, my apartment is within a block of the YMCA, and I have a grocery store, drugstore, restaurants, and bank all just as close. Second, the traffic is much heavier in Kansas City, so I use my car to drive short distances. I am a Eucharistic minister in Southston at St. Thomas More. My activities include golf, movie, like Kansas City Chiefs, and the rep. But I would still like to get involved with a community theater. I am a supporting member of the Mission Project, and this provides some social activities. But I would still like to have more friends. At the 2004 National Conference, I was elected to the board of the National Down Syndrome Congress and recently joined the board of the Community of the Good Shepherd organization. And I speak at national and local conferences and in groups like this one. I'm still working on some of my other goals, but I love being back in Kansas City. Even though I have my own goals and want independence, I still need support from my parents, my friends, my employer, my community, social services, and national organizations like NDSC. I would like to suggest that you to take some time this week and ask the following questions. 1. What are my most important personal goals? 2. What are the reasonable expectations that might be standing in the way of pursuing those goals? 3. What are the action steps needed to successfully achieve those goals? And 4. If these are my most important goals, why wait another day to get started? I would like to end my presentation with a favorite quote that helps me in setting goals, with the hope that it also helps you. Please be a little patient, because it has several parts, but the message is worth the wait. People are often unreasonable and often self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish or ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. What you spend this building, someone could destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, there may be jealousy. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you've got anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it's between you and God. It's never between you and them anyway. Thank you.